keeping it. The fine bite is what was failing after 40, 50 years. Any place where the bite was tough seemed to be where they didn't overdo it and do the work. I could shave this off with a sharpened chisel by hand. This won't come off. And the closer I get, you can see the bite. So this is why I wanted to kind of make this video too, because I'm learning things. We're all learning things. Now I see a lot of 80s stuff full of cheese and bad work, but every once in a while you get something like this. Look, whoever ran that weld, like this is, I can't explain how flush this is. Like they did a great job. I'm not fixing that. That is on there. That's permanent. We will make it rough, epoxy prime it, because I don't know how well filler will stick to this, right? Your brassy stuff. So we'll make that rough. We'll epoxy it. I can't see that failing again. And quite frankly, by putting the epoxy primer on it, we've done one step more than these guys. And again, you don't have to do that on all the metal. I'm thinking just to cover that brass stuff. But I mean, even if we didn't do that, look, this lasted 40, 50 years. It'll last that again. And I mean, what kind of warranty? Who cares? I'll be dead. Like, really? Look, if you get 10 years out of a job, they say that that's pretty good. There's your 40, 50 years. So people look at that and say, oh, I'd get a whole this and I'd sandblast the whole car and I'd put a new fender on and then I'd put the epoxy on and then I'd grind most of it off and do all the work and then I'd put another epoxy on and some kind of crazy high build and then the other high build and then block the whole car and then we'll put a sealer on it and paint it. And it's a funny thing because you put the high build on, most of them have a sealer built in. And the thing is, then you put a sealer on top and then you paint it. So why did you flatten out all the high builds? And this is something I can't quite wrap my head around. I'm not saying it's a bad way to do it. I just think that people are doing a lot of extra steps because the industry, the sales guys are telling them to. And this is why. So let's say you put some epoxy on some things that you want to, keep solid. You do all your filler work. And like I say, right over steel that's good and prepped and clean. There's nothing wrong with that. So you do that, and then you got your whatever filler you use. Not your filler, but your primer over top of the filler at the end. Now, this thing we use 2, 3, 4 like products, and they're talking about everything smooth, including the metal finishing. And I'm starting to wonder if like you're putting all these super fine layers that don't have a lot of tooth. But the sales guys are telling these younger guys especially like, oh, you got to do this to get enough tooth, sand it good, get enough tooth. And it's like you're running like the one video I watched about a week ago, the guy was doing a primer and he was going to put a base coat on it. And the base coat that he used is a base coat that I've used. And at the tech data sheet, it says 400 to 500 grit. That's where they want the tooth to be for that base coat, and then they put the clear coat and you're good to go. But what they did is what the sales guy apparently had told them, and they do a whole video explaining how, well, we did our, what was it? Oh yeah, right. So they did the G2 whatever high build, a whole bunch of it on the car. Then they blocked it all out. And I agree with that. You've blocked out the car. It's smooth. It's glassy. It's as smooth as you're going to get that bodywork. Now, you can paint over that, but they want to seal it because they were told that if you seal it, it'll be better and it'll last longer. So then they get it ready for the booth. They seal the car, roll it into the booth, and they paint the car. But you've just thrown sealer over the blocked stuff you've used. Now, you better be one hell of a good painter with that gun to not get little droplets in that sealer. Like, you follow what I'm saying? You literally spent days making it as smooth as you could, and then all of a sudden you're going to put another layer on it, and before, like, apparently you throw the sealer on it, let it sit for a little bit, and then you can paint right over it. And I'm like, hey, look, that's fine. You're probably close enough that it melts in. But at that point, seriously, you could have probably have thrown most paints over that. Now, if you're doing super thin paints, multiple layers, and I know like candies and whatnot, I understand and I get it. But most of these videos that I'm seeing, they're going to just a very basic base coat, clear coat. And the tech sheets, 400, 500 grit on the machine, and you can, you know what I mean? So I don't know why they're thinking it'll be smoother if I do 600. Well, sure, or 800. Well, for some paints, that's true. 99% of the world is not going to use super high-end paint. Look at your tech data sheets. Go online, print them off, get them from your paint supply, read them. Like I do matrix paint a lot. I think it's a pretty high-end system. It looks great when I do it. I think I take that down to about 500, and then I worry about it in my mind because you touch it and you look at it and it feels like there's no bite on it. My wife's Corolla got smoked by a deer a couple of years ago, and it's an oddball color. We went with matrix, and I did that one with 400, and I thought, it's my own car. I don't care if I see sand. That car is perfect. It looks factory. You can't see a swirl, a mark in it anywhere. And I basically did it quick with 400 through the base coat, through some pure reflections clear on it, which isn't a expensive clear. It's probably middle of the road in the lower tier of price, but it's okay. It's an okay clear coat. It dries quick, which is nice, because if you want to put it on fat, you might get a bit of a sag, but it won't necessarily run, which is why I like it. It's great in a collision shop. I find if I do complete jobs with it, though, I find you got to do it in pieces, because if you try to do, like, say, the whole side of a truck, it's hard to keep wet on wet, because it dries pretty quick. Anyway, so just something to think about when you're working on these things. Like, you're going to have a lot of sales guys, a lot of different people, and a lot of videos telling you to overdo things. And there's some people doing videos and building some great cars, and I'm not knocking what they're doing. But just understand that for most of us walking around with a daily driver, clean your metal, do your body work, put a decent primer on it. And listen, I know I've said things about, in some of my videos about, you know, that lacquer garbage. I'm not talking about a 1K lacquer primer that some of the body guys are using out there. The professional stuff like that, for most jobs, is fine. When you're doing a bunch of spray bomb work, you got to go a little better with your stuff, right? The $8 a can stuff sucks. The $18, $25 a can stuff is okay. You follow? So that's what I mean by that. So just because a product is a 1K doesn't mean it's total trash. Sometimes, look, you're doing a quarter on a 20-year-old Ford Ranger, it's probably going to be fine, and that work will probably outlast the rest of the truck. So, right, that's something you got to think of. Now, what I like to use, CRE 321. It's an epoxy primer. It's sticky. It don't come off. You can play with it, do some panels, and test it out. Very expensive gallon, and then you get 2 quarts of activator stuff that mixes into it. I like it because you can put 3 coats on fairly fat. You scuff off with a Scotch-Brite a little bit of that sheen off of it, and you can block that stuff out like really, really nice. And I say you Scotch-Brite off the sheen because it doesn't seem to eat your paper when you do. I can't remember the guy's name, but somebody commented on one of my earlier videos. He says, by the way, when you're doing this, do that first. I did try it, and thank you, that worked. But, you know, you can do that. I recently saw a video where the guy used this stuff, and I use their clear coat all the time. High build gray primer, direct to substrate. Now, this is for going over top of Bondo and bodywork and everything else. This was less than half the price of the stuff I normally use. This should be fine. Now, the other stuff you can go direct to metal, over substrates. You can pretty much seal up anything. You can even thin it down and use it as a sealer. I've been told you could do that with this. I haven't tried this yet, but we're going to try this. And the reason I got this stuff, this car is pretty big. So we're going to do the quarters. There's certain places where there's a bit of sand swirl in it. I'm done messing with the car. It's time to put a good solid primer on it. That stuff is supposed to be pretty good. There's no bare metal anywhere on this car. Excuse me. Allergies and hot days, and I just came off of a cold. But anyway, I got a few things to finish up on this quarter. Most of the car's done. Finish the trunk, get it on the ground. I'm going to use that to prime this car. A few heavy coats in a few places, thinner coats in other places. Then we're going to hand sand the whole car. This car is almost ready to paint once I finish it up and prime it, right? So I'm going to do a video later to tell you what this stuff is like. I saw a couple videos of YouTubers that I believe know what they're talking about. They seem to do good work. I think this stuff will be good. And then the one guy was showing this, and I mean, he works in a pro shop, so he knows, right? He does collision work and different things, and he was using this, and he said it was pretty good. Now, I can't vouch for it yet, but I'm going to try it, and honestly, I think it'll be fine. But I mean, if you have a good product that works, and you try it and it works, I mean, why would you want 15 products on your car? So some guys will argue you put epoxy, then you scuff it, but leave it on, but then put your filler, and then more filler, and then there'll be some primer in there, but then we're gonna seal the primer, and then we're gonna put this on, and we're gonna use this as for sanding and blocking, and then when we're done, we're gonna do a sealer. You may have to, you may not. Like, it's too many products, too many layers. Right now, when you strip a car, grab a razor blade, like a glass cleaning blade. Like, I can take a razor blade, I can come between these two blues, and I'm sure I can just shave that light blue right off of the dark blue. Now, when you do that, sometimes you can find that there's different layers. Some layers don't want to come off of other layers, but then you find layers that come off real easy. And it's amazing. You see that red primer. It's mostly clean. It's mostly smooth. All the paint came off that red primer with a razor blade. With no force. It's not all jagged up. This is hard and stuck to the car. The paint was on it. Now, this is probably some old 1K primer from way back in the day. Now, we're going to sand that off till we see filler and mostly metal. But I mean, why waste a bunch of paper? Like, zip. It shaved right off, and I only spent a few minutes on that. I did spend time with a chisel taking all this stuff off. And again, it's probably the same amount of time as if you were trying to grind it all out. But this car, what I've been trying to do, like, think archaeology. I was trying to see what they did, what they didn't do, why it didn't rot. Because the funny thing is, this car is old. It was stored in a lot of different places, not necessarily heated, in Ontario, Canada, which isn't always the best. Like, and things didn't rot away. Now, a lot of them I've redone. There's always something, some corner, some cab corner, some lower quarter. Look at the lower quarter. That's not where the issues are on this car. All that stuff is still 100%. It's all where basically things let go at the welds, and I don't know if the green is flux or corrosion or humidity, moisture got sucked in. Either way, the metal held up. And that's a 1K old school oxide shitty primer. So, I mean, I doubt it's factory, but I guess it could be. I don't think so, but you know. I mean, if it was, it wouldn't be on that panel and that panel. You think there'd be a variation because that whole panel's off of another car. Anyway, it's something to think about. There's a lot going on there, but I mean, if this extremely bad work lasted 40, 50 years, that, in my opinion, is all you've got to do. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.